to Pastor Plek's podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Plek. Along with my co-host today is Ruben Campos. You work at Lifeway.
Yeah, Lifeway Christian Resource.
We love Lifeway. So Lifeway is pretty great. And so we are so excited to have him on board with us today. We've got a couple questions that we have been dealing with. One, especially in light of the Charlie Kirk assassination, which we found out about. We were sitting right here last week when that came up. Hold on. And so I want us to talk about it. It was one of those things we were watching the events unfold right here. Yep. And we almost went live with it, but it was like, it's too raw, too crazy. And I was like, I don't know how I'm able to process that. Our church did say something about it on Sunday. And I think that, there's a lot of takes on that. There's a lot of debate amongst pastor world. Should you or should you not say something about Charlie Kirk? I don't know if you knew that was a thing. Yeah.
I've seen quite a bit of that going back and forth online. So I have seen that.
Yeah, and so on the one hand, you had a lot of communities that had felt really hurt by Charlie Kirk and a lot of his. He's a provocateur. I mean, he definitely was. No prove me wrong. Mm-hmm. But then, and so he had that sort of mentality. But then at the same time, guys like me, I really appreciated his work and would watch it regularly. Yeah. And really thought he was graceful at sharing the gospel. And although he'd come with an ice hat, he was able, when he got into a dialogue with somebody, it wasn't personal attack. It was policy, ideology, debate. And I really thought that was awesome. So I know that there was a lot there. And so pastors, we're kind of in this debate aspect of should we say something, should we not say something?
For sure. Yeah.
And so it was kind of a wild deal. What was your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I think you touched on a lot of points there, but just in regards, for instance, as a starting point, kind of the way that he opened up his platform. Yeah. I mean, just starting there, you talk about whether he was doing policy or espousing some sort of ideology. The fact of the matter is that he always did give an opportunity for others of opposing views to come and speak, right? And
he gave him a mic and a full 15 minutes to go for it.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched countless videos at this point, and I find myself at times struggling to think, could I do that? Could I be as gracious as he was during that conversation when they're berating him and yelling him down?
One of my favorite ones when an old guy came up and said, "I want to duel. I want to fist fight you."
Yes.
And he's like,
"No, the Holy Spirit sent me."
The Holy Spirit. That's right. The Holy Spirit sent me to fist fight you. Which I was like, okay.
Yeah. So I think one of the important things to sort of wean out of this is the idea of tensions, right? Yeah. We're talking about, should churches get behind this sort of thing? Should pastors, should they mention it? Should they not? Right. And, he was a political ideologue and at the same time a believer. And so where do we draw the line? And I'm a proponent of, and this is something I learned, listening to John Piper all the time. Yeah. He's always talking about, man, if you're going to be a Christian, you have to be able to maintain tensions, right? And I think this is one of those moments where this is not a biblical tension, but this is a tension in reality, in life. He was a political figure, but he was also a believer and held to Christian values. And so I think there's a place there in the middle where we can say, to a degree, there's things that are acceptable, and there's other things that we should probably steer clear of. But in regards to, certainly well-wishing his wife and his children and things like that, and pastors acknowledging an event of this size on a global scale, I tend to think there's nothing inappropriate about that.
Yeah. And especially since, I think, during the George Floyd things, you had to say something like, hey, somebody died, and that's sad. Yeah. And I don't think that police officer woke up that day thinking I'm gonna go kill somebody, but ultimately it was sad. It was a lament towards the death of someone, and it was on such a public thing. And one of the things I've sort of learned, and maybe I learned this late in my pastoral, 4 years in 2016, Donald Trump was elected, and I was it was also Veterans Day weekend, so. That Sunday morning, I focused on Veterans Day, and I didn't say anything about Trump. And I had several people angry. I mean, like just fired up, angry at me. Like, how could you not say anything? Why would you be silent about this?
Yeah.
You know, this is the worst thing for our country. And I was like, you know, it's actually not that bad. It's actually pretty great.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the things I didn't realize, like how I thought me not saying anything at all was like, I don't want to inflame anyone on the left, and I don't want to like over exalt him anywhere on the right. And I was like, okay, I think that's the right answer. And clearly that was, I mean, I had some people super angry. Anyway, and you're not gonna make everybody happy.
Yeah.
So what I realized is like saying something is better than saying nothing.
Yeah. I would
and because like people want to be led through that. And I was like, okay, so next time around 2020, when Joe Biden was elected, I said, hey, God has the person he wants on the throne. This did not get past his will.
Yeah.
This is and there's some people feel like this is like glorious. Finally, we have somebody of common sense and practicality. Isn't going to say anything stupid on Twitter. And then other people that were just like angry and
complete
like
opposite.
It was as if the same visceral reaction from 2016. Hence the polarization of politics. I just don't know if I've seen people feel this drastically, wildly awful. And maybe this is true. Maybe you know, this is the part where that I just haven't been paying attention, or I wasn't old enough to figure it out. But I don't know. Like, it didn't feel like when George Bush won in 2000, like it was like, you know, we won the Super Bowl. It's just like, oh, cool. He seems like he loves Jesus. That's great.
Wasn't as volatile.
Right. It just wasn't. And Clinton before that, even though there was, scandal galore, it was just like, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So then in 2020, so with Biden winning, and then all of a sudden, before that, you have the George Floyd stuff.
Yeah.
And we had to say something about that. Like, hey, this, so, and then to Biden, then again, Trump wins. It's like, we got to say something. And so I think this is where pastors, it's an impossible job, as you know, is that you've got to lead people in the congregation, sort of understand there's everybody at every political spectrum, and you want to make sure that people are heard and felt and all the things, except we also have to lead them towards the direction of hope and peace.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think there's this kind of, and I don't think it's a biblical notion, but there's this concept in science of NOMA, non-overlapping magisteria, right? And it's we don't overlap the concepts of science and Christianity, right? They don't combine, right? Mm-hmm. They're not on the same level, that sort of thing, and right. So you seek to kind of shift those things apart, this non-overlapping magisteria, and people have the same idea in regards to religion and politics, right? But I would say, man, if you take a hard look at Scripture, now I'm not saying the pulpit should ever become a platform for politics,
right?
But it's hard for me to look at Scripture and not see the marriage so often between politics and religious belief, right? Mm-hmm. And so whether it was Solomon or David, whether it was Nehemiah,
right,
whether it was John who's talking about Herod, or Jesus who's talking about the Pharisees, and while they were religious leaders, they were highly involved in politics.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
And so there's certainly, from a biblical perspective, I think there's plenty of ground to say, hey, it's okay and not inappropriate.
Right. I mean, even what you said about science. I mean, science and religion all cross all the time. Like when when we talk about the way the brain is made, or the way that you process emotions. I mean, in fact, this week we talked about overcoming fear. This next week we're talking about overcoming sadness, and there's a part of it. There's depression's a thing, and real Bible characters experienced it, and so there's a science of the brain. So I think that no matter what, as a pastor, you're going to kind of cross over so many different. I don't know if vocation's the right word, but disciplines. So many different disciplines that it's not that you need to be knowledgeable about everything, but just understanding that there's going to be something that you're going to say that might offend or affect all these different disciplines, which is why a lot of pastors use sports illustrations because usually they're not offensive.
But it's great that you bring that up in regards to disciplines of life, and because the reality is, how many times if you go to a church website and you go to values and missions, and they talk about Scripture, and they talk about Scripture being their ultimate source for truth in all of faith and life, right? Well, if it's for all of faith and life, then surely we should be able to talk about things that are happening on a global scale politically, right? Again, to a degree, right?
There's absolutely. And I feel like you don't. Yeah, I think so. So here's a question that came up that sparked all this. Should a church really be standing behind a man like Charlie Kirk? I know he claims to be a Christian and follows all Christian nationalist talking points to a T, but does he really exhibit Christian fruit? When I look at the latest YouTube videos, they are labeled things like Charlie Kirk hands out L's, Charlie Kirk sends someone into a mental breakdown, and other things that he is obviously showing disdain to people who don't look like him or believe like him. He obviously likes to be divisive more on political points than Christian point, so it just seems weird to make an Instagram post for him. So, if all Charlie Kirk was like just a Instagram influencer, he wouldn't be the news. He's still in the. It's a 24/7 news cycle, so I don't think saying nothing is appropriate. Yeah, and now, are there some things that Charlie Kirk may have done? Maybe he was a provocateur. He was like, let me. Dig you, but the things that you watch, like he did, he had stuff of like, watch Charlie Kirk dismantle this, and you're like, okay. And I sometimes watch
crushes his opponent,
and I watched it. I'm like, that wasn't actually that crushing. It was actually kind of tame. It's a lot of clickbait. Should we punish people for clickbait? Yes. Listen, did he clickbait me a million times? Yes, but 100%. Did I actually enjoy a lot of the stuff he did? Yeah, absolutely. So, do I want to punish someone for clickbait? No. Everyone's got to make a living somehow, but I think that's where the real problem with him is on the clickbait. I thought whenever he talked or spoke, it was really well spoken. He was really articulate. And I don't like, a lot of times people thought of him as a racist, which I thought was sort of wild because one of his best friends was like Candace Owens. And I'm not all out Candace Owens fan. She's got her issues for sure. Tons of issues.
Topic for another day.
I feel like she has said something about Charlie Kirk really wanted to be Catholic, and I was like, okay, anyway, it's like, why would you even say that? But clearly, we were talking before. Tell me about some of the things that he did for the Black community that was unique. Yeah.
So real quick before I jump into that, I would recommend to the questioner or anybody else who's kind of questioning this idea that Charlie Kirk may have been racist, to when you're searching, rather than just looking at what comes into your feed, you can ask questions to these search engines, right? So if you're on YouTube, you can say, was Charlie Kirk a racist? And you'll see a plethora of videos coming up from his Black supporters, his Black fan base, right? Saying, that's crazy, right? Here's why, and so some of those videos may be helpful to people who are looking for more answers, and maybe wanting to hear as well from a minority group, right? What they thought about it. And I say that as a Caucasian man, but I'm Cuban and Mexican, right? And so a lot of times people will be like, "Oh, you're saying that because you're a white guy, right?" But I know very well, growing up in a Spanish household with two immigrant parents, what it's like to have prejudice leveled against you.
Wait, but you speak Spanish?
Yes, I do.
Do you also speak Portuguese?
I do. I speak Portuguese as well. So I learned Portuguese dating a girl in a Brazilian church. So but I'll tell you.
That's how you do it right there.
It came to me after a couple of months. It just clicked.
Okay. Wow. That's wild.
So yeah. But going back to Charlie Kirk and whether or not he was a racist, a couple of things like you mentioned, his friendship and partnership with Candace Owens, who he traveled literally all 50 states with, touring campuses, touring different conference centers, and globally as well for years, right? And he's tight friendships with Officer Tatum, who's another guy who speaks very highly of him. But I was mentioning before that he was the one who put together, I think it was the Young Black Leadership Summit a few years back, where hundreds of Black leaders were flowing in from across the nation with money that Charlie raised. To do this, right? And it was his idea. It was the first Black Leadership Summit in our nation's capital's history, and it was put together by Charlie Kirk, right?
Yeah. So whatever you have to say about him, he's not racist. I think that would have been super clear. You may disagree with him ideologically, which then gets us to the next point. And here's what the person kind of wrote a subsequent text in. She said, never mind. I prayed about it. And even though the intentional race baiting does lead to a harder life for my children and myself, it makes me not like or respect him. I can't base my disdain for another Christian over something that is a non-salvation issue, and shouldn't lose respect for another Christian who obviously values the gospel and spreading it, probably better than me, even if he chooses to race bait. And so I don't know about the race baiting per se, although if what you mean is like, throwing out L's, and again, the clickbait drove me crazy.
Yeah.
But what I do want to say is that we see that you're going to have secondary issues. I think I put this here. Watch this. If I believe that human beings are made in the image of God, and that God loves all people, that makes it into a primary issue. Like you've damaged the image of God when you say like God has a second class of human being.
Absolutely.
I mean, is that okay to put that into the primary issues? I don't want to be overly crazy about it.
I would still make a distinction between what it looks like our questioner is asking, like salvific issue,
right?
Versus, but I would still say a primary issue. Yeah. Absolutely.
So that may not be a salvific issue, but maybe a primary issue for like being a part of a church or whatever would be like, hey, if you can't wrap your head around God's love for all people, and you think like that someone is worth less because of what their skin color, culture, background is, then clearly you are not able to see what Christ has done on the cross and that his value for the humans that he created, and you're not seeing the imago Dei in people. So I think we would go there. So
go ahead.
No, this is the part I say, what place should we draw? And I think the question is like, man, I feel like some of this stuff is problematic for me, and I don't know what it like. Let's take it's not the race thing. Let's just move off that. Let's say his position on immigration.
Yeah.
How are Christians to argue? And I mean, argue, maybe reason. I know argue seems like a strong word, but I feel like, you have a position, I have a position. Let's argue about it and work it out.
Yeah.
Like, how are Christians supposed to do that in a way, in a public square that gets their position heard without being called a fascist or being murdered for it? I think that's the issue that I feel like has been brought up nationwide. And honestly, I feel like recently Pam Bondi, the AG, has, they're going to call all the speech of everyone that was sort of against Charlie Kirk, or was just like hate speech. And I'm like, whoa. I mean, this is where I'm like, I don't want us to go to this place where we're just locked here. We're just like, what are we doing? Now I agree that this might be this is a place where, God and government has a relationship. God and the church has a relationship. God and the family has a relationship.
Yeah.
And that might be a great place for the church to step in and say, hey, you shouldn't talk like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on that from that perspective.
Yeah, I haven't heard what she mentioned on this, so I'm not familiar with it. But I'm certainly I'm for less classifying speech as hate speech. Right. I don't want more of that. I think we should have less of that. But the challenge there becomes, like you mentioned, how can we do that and still remain safe, right? How can we have these sorts of conversations and dialogues where quote unquote alleged hate speech is being shared and still, be in a place, in a position where
here's what she said. There's free speech and then there's hate speech, and there's no place, especially now in our society. We will absolutely target you, go after you. If you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything, and that's across the aisle. And then after that backlash, she clarified, by hate speech, she meant speech that crosses the line into threats of violence, which she says is not protected by the First Amendment. Well, of course. Then I'm
that I agree with.
That I agree with. The problem is words have meaning, and look up the dictionary. What is the definition of hate speech? And I don't know if we don't. This is why Webster invented. I think we were talking about this morning in Bible study. Webster invented the Bible so we'd know what words meant. So
the dictionary. Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, he invented the dictionary so we know what words mean.
Yes.
Anyway, that's where I look at this whole thing and I'm like, and I feel like there is no common universally accepted definition. So therefore you can call anything hate speech and everyone's like, well, that's my definition.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get into what is a woman, next thing you know. Okay. So anyway, all right. So we understand there's a difference. So And I feel like you've really had, especially being at Lifeway, where you guys have to kind of think through a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's not like Christians are monolithic, like they only vote for Republicans. And so there is a part of this, even talking about Charlie Kirk in any sort of positive way has a negative effect on people. And what is what's the Christian response? The right one. I feel like here's the part that's hard. What's the right Christian response when someone's coming at it like you're supporting like a person who hates immigrants, or your person hates people, and you may think it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but they're coming with such strong language, and now all of a sudden it's a polemic. And I think there's a place for logical debate between believers, understand that there's a love for one another that's understood. But I think what happens a lot of time, we don't have that. Where do you think the line is drawn on how we do that well?
I think for me, the line, I think the line is drawn in regards to not allowing fear to be the motivation for which I stop. Right. Like I think that, so there's a component of truth, right? I always want to be conveying truth, at least to the best of my ability. But the other part is, I think that if I'm ever feeling prohibited or inhibited from sharing a truth, because I'm scared of what the repercussion might be, right? Oh, if you do that, you'll lose this many followers, or, people will stop coming to your restaurant, that sort of thing. I go back to, what is it, Martin Luther, I think, where the whole "Here I Stand," like that sort of thing. I think as Christians, we have to be able to take a stance on things that are true. Right. And I think that whatever the cost for that is, I think Charlie was doing that. I think that's actually going back to Charlie, he was taking a stance, despite the obvious dangers that were present in him doing so, right? I'm putting aside his political views, just doing what he was doing when he was espousing Christian views on campuses, but primarily very liberal campuses, right? He was putting himself in a place of danger, but he determined that, hey, I'm going to take a stand for what's true, and share that without fear. And so I think as Christians, that's something we should be doing as well.
So here's kind of the pushback I'm seeing is like, it goes like something like this: how can you stand up for one man, Charlie Kirk, when you're not standing up for all the genocide in the Gaza? And I think that becomes a super, and like, why, really a lot of like, there's all these things happening globally. Yeah. You're not saying anything about that, but why are you saying something about, at least that's what I've been seeing. Like that was one of the ones that popped up. Or why you don't care about there was a governor that was
Minnesota.
Not governor. It was, I think their state, Speaker of the House or something.
Minnesota though, right?
Yeah. Minnesota's like state government.
Yeah.
A lady which is terrible. I don't know her name.
She was killed, right?
She was murdered. She was essentially assassinated for her political views, and that's how I didn't even know that until the Charlie Kirk thing came up. To be fair, and it's not my news feed. Yeah. It might be because guess where my news feed is. It's the echo chamber of all the stuff I want to hear, which is not great, but it is what it is. And so clearly we need to kind of, that's wrong. You should not murder somebody because 100%. They have a different view than you. In fact, even if they have a different view, let the government handle that. Like, you don't need to take, this is vigilante justice, even if you think that person did something that deserved death. Well, even then, you've got to let the government handle it. The king doesn't bear the sword for nothing. It's his to bear.
Absolutely. For something like, I've been hearing this a lot, and I really try my best to go towards and lean into simple, plain, understandable responses, right? Everything doesn't have to be hyper politicized, right? And so she was a politician. She was assassinated, right? Now, is it super complex to understand the difference between what happened to her and what happened to Charlie? I don't think so, right? For what you're saying right now, right? Out of sight is out of mind. Yeah. That's not a theological premise. That's not a political premise. That's just a common sense thing. I've never seen her before. I've never heard her. I'm devastated. I hate to hear that she was killed. That's horrid, right? But Charlie Kirk was somebody I heard. I followed his career for 8 years. I saw his star rise, right? I was also invested in his positions, right? And so all of these things lend themselves to, for individually to me, having a greater response to what happened to Charlie than to her. Now, when you multiply that by millions of people who had the same experience as I did, right, in regards to those two individuals, it's not challenging to understand why there wasn't such an uproar. That's not to say, that's not a value statement that her life was worth less at all. That's not a value proposition. That's just a simple, common sense. Hey, like this individual wasn't in the limelight.
Right.
Like Charlie.
So Melissa Hortman, that's it. Melissa Hortman, she was murdered on June 14th, which it's wild that I mean, it's sad in some ways, right?
Yeah.
But she didn't have the, I'm sure, there's probably murders that happen every day, and each human life is individually valuable. And that is absolutely wrong. It is, it's killing the Imago Dei, which that's how God chose to represent himself on the planet, was with like, I mark my territory with human beings. And when you slay one of those, it's like erasing a tag from the gang. Like you have done irreparable damage, and your life is required of that if you murder somebody, which is sort of wild. Okay. Yeah. So, So, go ahead.
A simple thought experience for anybody who's watching to do is just consider your own parents, a sibling, right? How you feel if you lose a sibling, you get news that your brother, your sister, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle has passed away, someone that you were close to. It's devastating. Mm-hmm. If you hear news about someone in a foreign country far off and away that you have no idea about, the cousin, uncle, aunt of somebody else, you're not going to feel the same way. Right. And so it's on just a simple premise, it's that easy to understand. Obviously, it's more complex because there's added components to it. But I think it's, when we begin to break it down like that, it becomes a little easier to comprehend.
Okay. So I think we hammered that. But I think there's so much politically, globally. I mean, we could talk tariffs and what does Jesus say about that? Yeah. I mean, I don't really, this is where the government has its own autonomy in some ways to govern as it sees fit on stuff like tariffs and what's the best thing for our country, interest rates, what's the best
Fed's
thing?
Cut rate today.
Hey, that's right. Yeah. Quarter point cut today. Thank you, Jerome Powell.
Something.
So I think there's that's like, there's so much going on. I think what was hard for me in 2020 is it felt like every day there was a new crisis. Yeah. And then I would be criticized for not reacting fast enough, but then I'd react and I'd find out more information that wasn't exactly like what I thought it was. Yeah. And that became such a, I just felt like a slingshot, just a pendulum, just super fast, just not knowing how to handle each and everything. And I feel like, honestly, I think I've said this before. I was not prepared theologically for the anthropological arguments of like, what's my argument about man, race, gender. Yeah. I think I'd done a good job of understanding on my own, like sexuality and homosexuality. And I was able to articulate that very well. I felt good about that. But when it came to 2020, I think I was weak on understanding a logical understanding of how human beings are made in the image of God and how to punish one set of humans for the pain of another was just sort of an off thing to do. Yeah. That honestly, it wouldn't be off biblically if you kind of say like, they will pay for their sins to the third and fourth generation, but I'll show my love to the 1,000th generation. However, when we get to Ezekiel, that shifts and you see that each man will die for his own sin. Yeah. Which is sort of an interesting shift theologically, anthropologically, because as you look at man, how are they to take on sin and how do they pass it forward? And are you now responsible for the sins of your forefathers? And what we've clearly seen is like, no, you aren't. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
I would agree 100% with that.
And I don't think I was prepared. Like again, that came from a lot of reading. I think Vodi Bakum was one of the guys I read that would just really help me. I also read all the other stuff of what was the crazy one that
fragility.
White fragility. I read White Fragility, and then I did a lot of Ibrahim Kendi. I read all his stuff, and I was like, oof. And it helped see that there wasn't a biblical bias. It was just a oppressor.
Yeah.
And it was a regurgitation of a Marxist doctrine, which
absolutely
I wasn't, I don't know if I would have been able to see that prior to that. But I was like, oh, you've just put everybody in this class and they have to be in constant repentance for their existing because of what they look like. And that to me was like, isn't that exactly what we want to get away from? Anyway. All right. So I know we probably went way down a rabbit hole. And probably people tuned out by now. Okay. But I do want to say, like, whenever, like, if you are in a political minority in a church, I don't know if that's, if like your pastor is more bent to the right or if he's more bent to the left and he says something that you don't agree with, I think that's a great time to have the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. One of the things you pointed out earlier was just when the 2020, I think you were saying you were just getting bombarded weekly. I mean, all of us were. We were just experiencing. We're having questions every week. And while we mentioned at the onset of the conversation that I think we both agreed that yes, these are things that the pastors should engage, should talk about. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any question there. I think the question is, how do we determine which things to talk about?
Yeah.
Because honestly, like you're saying, if we're paying attention to the media and to the things going on around us, there's no lack of new things being poured in every day that we can address, right? And so, like I'll toss that back to you and I'll say, when pastors are being bombarded, leaders so often, church leaders, by different things that are coming in, how do you distinguish?
Yeah, I
to
think
talk about what not to talk
that's
about?
good. Yeah, I feel like so for example, I know this is terrible. I don't think I even really knew about the Colorado shooting.
Okay,
like I think that happened just before this, and the stabbing on the New
train,
North
Carolina.
North Carolina. See, I didn't even know that happened. So that's where I'm. To be caught up on everything. In fact, I think Charlie Kirk was actually calling for pastors to like mention the Ukrainian woman and her story on Sunday mornings, and I'm not sure what his call to action was, but I know that he said something, and I missed that one. And so at some point, I've become okay with not being attached to my phone to stare at it to get updates all the time. In fact, that social, was it called, the Social Network or something like that? It was like not the one about how Facebook was invented, but the one about the documentary about like how the algorithms work.
No, I'm not.
All right, so there's essentially this documentary goes, the algorithms work to kind of make you're the customer and you're going to repeat, and they're going to try and get you to, do their.
Oh yes, I think I do remember. Yeah.
So I. After I saw that, I intentionally went and messed up my algorithm so I don't know anybody on my Facebook.
Yeah. How'd it work out?
It worked out great. I don't know anything. It's like, it's just a bunch of random people I don't care about, so I put it down. And every now and then I'll post something like I care about, and I'll go into it. But like, I don't see the people I interact with. Yeah. And so I'm not getting angry about stuff that they probably won't care about at the end of the news cycle. Yeah. So as a pastor, I think I was like, when something comes to me, I need to investigate as much as I can. And if it comes to me 2 or 3 times, then I'm probably like, or if it's something I genuinely know about, a lot of that stuff I just didn't know. Like the Colorado, I hate to say mass shootings have become so commonplace, but I think it was a shooting and I just didn't get the details. I heard there was a shooting. I wasn't really sure. Was that a shooting that had already happened and someone's regurgitating about? Anyway, I think that's the problem. There's so much that give your pastor grace on what he knows, doesn't know, whole story. At the same time, you don't need to send him, you don't need to do the research for him because that gets really annoying. Although I appreciate that you work so hard. Okay. But yeah, I think we covered that. All right. We're going to shift here to something not intense.
A little less serious.
Yeah. All right. Everyone just chill out for a sec. All right. This is from another person. I thought it'd be fun to have a couples conversation about Hollywood crushes. Is it okay to have them? Why or why not? My boyfriend and I had this conversation and we have different opinions on this topic. I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, the topic of crushes. So I think I don't know if it was today or last week, but I think it was this morning actually. Yeah. We're talking about defining terms. You had brought up Webster.
Yeah,
right?
Webster's dictionary, not Webster's Bible.
Yeah, and so I think that to to even like start this conversation, let's just like define what a crush is.
Yeah,
right?
thank you.
So let's see what you pull up there.
Yeah, hold on. I did pull it up. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, here we go. Crush.
Intense something.
This is okay. All right. First, is it admiration or idolatry? All right. It's natural to admire someone's beauty, talent, or charisma. But if a crush is idolatry, placing that person to a place of worship or ultimate devotion or obsession who dominates your thoughts and desires, or is it a fantasy? Like I get a hall pass if I ever meet my celebrity, I get to, have a night with them, and that is your gift to me, because that'll probably never happen. But just in case it does, I don't want to ever give a what if. Right? It's wild. Okay.
The hubris in that. I mean, just the notion that like, even if you met your celebrity crush, that they would want to spend a night with you. It's so ridiculous.
It is. Yeah, it's like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna right there in the 80th row. Yeah, come on. So I think that's where we're going. And I think the problem with crush, is that we all have different ones.
Yeah. So when I think of crush, I tend to think of an infatuation, right? There's a certain infatuation, and I use that term because when I think of infatuation, there's a sort of unrational, unreasonable attachment, right? This sort of obsessing over, and so
they're idealized, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you don't know. I mean, once you've kind of gone on a road trip with them, once you've lost your bags with them, stuck in an airport with them, and everyone's kind of crabby, the idealistic version is out.
Yeah, that honeymoon phase, right? The euphoric notion of what you think about. And I think actually the Bible provides us a couple of examples of that, right? So the first one I would say is, I think it's 2 Samuel, right? We have Amnon and Tamar.
Yeah.
Right? And then he's just like, he sees her and he's like,
I got it. And it's wild. It's his sister.
It's his sister, yeah.
Half sister, but granted, it's still a sister.
Exactly. So, he's has what we'd call a crush, right? He's unreasonably attached to her. He finds her desirable, and that results in what? It results in raping her, right? And so you can quickly see how you can go from crush into, he's fantasizing about being with her. Right. They're plotting. How do we get her into bed with you, right? Him and his friend are plotting together.
It's wild that like his buddy comes to help him out.
Yeah.
Here's what you do.
I know, right?
And you're like, you are not a friend. You're a psychopath. You're now, to be fair, maybe life was pretty boring in the palace, and they're like, hey, I'm in the palace. I need to stir some stuff up. Let's go.
But yeah, that to me is, that story has always been repulsive in one sense, but very eye-opening too, because what you find is after he ends up succeeding in this really disgusting plan, right? It says that he looks at her and he hates her.
He hates her more than he loved her.
More than he loved her.
Like, what?
Yes.
What a weird story.
It's so crazy.
Okay, so all right, so let's talk about this. So like, if you and your boyfriend have a crush, and I mean a celebrity crush, and it's like, if I have the chance to get with, name the person, and you are alone with them after a show at whatever, are you going to say, I mean, do you even have that conversation? It just takes you down a dark place. So no, that's not. If that's what you mean, no.
Yeah.
Can you have a favorite actor? Sure. You can have a favorite actor, a favorite athlete, someone you enjoy watching, someone, like even like political or pastoral or scientific or business. Like, there's a lot of people that just love, Steve Jobs still, he's gone now. Like, okay, go Tim Cook, all right, the current Apple CEO. You could like, I really admire how smart and whatever he is.
Yeah.
Or Elon Musk, Elon Musk, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's some cool things there, but when you obsess about him and whatever Elon says becomes like, you write it on your wall and you're like, Elon said, therefore I do. I mean, I think that becomes problematic. And I think that's the same kind of thing with a celebrity crush of like, that's my girl or that's my guy.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, so I think before you even reach the point of celebrity crush, let's say you're crushing on somebody in person.
Yeah.
Right. I think that, if we're defining it in a certain sense as an unreasonable attachment, I do think that you can go from an unreasonable attachment to reasonable, I do think that if like you just meet somebody and the first day you're like, you go home and you're just enamored, you're like, oh my gosh, he's so cute, she's so cute, whatever that is. And then later, as you get to know them, you start developing, hey, there's real connection here. It's no longer unreasonable to feel the way that you feel, right? And so you can move from a sort of initial infatuation to a healthy romantic love or affection or admiration for somebody based on real things that you now have in common, right? Maybe. Right. But if that doesn't happen and it stays in that area of like, well, I don't even talk to them, right? But I'm just thinking about it. I go home and I dream about him after church, right? Or I dream about her, I think that's where it becomes a slippery slope. When you move to the place of celebrity crush, I think it's almost immediately gets there. I remember hearing a sermon or a talk once. A guy was asking a question, kids cover your ears, about, hey, I travel a lot. I bring a picture of my wife and, I use that to imagine and pleasure myself, right? Is that appropriate? Is that okay as a Christian? And the response I thought was great. And ultimately came down to, your wife, when she's in your presence, is the subject of your affection and your love.
That's good.
That image is the object.
Oh, I like that.
Right? And so now
that's a great way to look at it.
It's gone from subject to object. That's idolatry.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Right? And so when I think of celebrity crush, I mean, like those people are really not the subject of your affection. Right? You only see images and pictures of them. You don't even know who they are. You just hear stories. And now all of a sudden you're giving affection, admiration, love even to an object. Right? Now you've gone from, you slipped from what you think is a crush or an infatuation, and that's idolatry. Right? Now you're giving affection and admiration to something that can't give it back. Right? Yeah. So it's I think it's a very slippery slope. I would be cautious with that. I certainly wouldn't encourage crushes. I know some couples do that because we're so comfortable. I'm so comfortable. Yeah. He talks about how much he loves so-and-so, and she talks about, not something I would recommend.
I just don't think, and maybe this is just me, that if my wife was talking about, I'm just going to go with Ryan Reynolds. All right, just throwing him out. If she's talking about Ryan Reynolds and like how much she has a crush on him, what does that do for me? I don't think that, and thank God she does, but I don't think that would honor me.
Yeah.
I don't think that would, it's just, that's where I go. And maybe this is me being too careful, but I don't think so. I think this just leaves room for a lot of darkness and, let's say I get comparison issues. Now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm never enough, and I gotta get to the gym way more, or got cut weight, or start wearing Deadpool suits or whatever. Yeah. Just like what's my eventually I'm gonna start. If it means that much to her, that's gonna have an effect on me.
Yeah, for sure.
On the other hand, like I think it's a wise place to say like, hey, I have these feelings, like. And help me process them. Yeah. And because then also when you keep stuff in the dark, it kind of festers and like. But if you can say like, but I don't think it to glory in like I'm just obsessing about Ryan Reynolds. I don't.
There's no net gain.
There's no net gain. But I thought, hey, I'm struggling because I don't know. I've been thinking about Ryan Reynolds a lot. Okay, let's pray about that. I think that gets us to a place of health as opposed to a place of like glorying in your fantasy.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that. Like you said, I think when you putting even, let's say if somebody is insecure, I don't think you're an insecure guy, but if you are struggling with insecurity, putting that aside, there's no net positive. Right. Yeah. In doing something.
Yeah. Even if that like, because I could probably see myself being like, whatever, but knowing that doesn't do good for her heart.
Yeah.
That would not do well for her heart.
What's being fostered there? Yeah. In her heart. Yeah.
Because then, maybe there is a guy that looks a little bit more like Ryan Reynolds. Yeah. And, maybe if I can't have Ryan, I can get the lookalike guy. And, there's a lot there. I just think that overall, I don't know what the debate is at this particular relationship. I'm just going to say, whoever's on the side of not doing the relationship crush, you are far wiser. And you get full credit from our contest.
Yeah. And I think even on that note, just thinking of, going back to the idea of idolatry and affections and admirations, like shouldn't those be going to your current girlfriend, your current spouse, right? Why would you divide that, right? Was that there's a proverb that talks about don't drink from anybody else's fountain.
Yeah, that's Proverbs 5. Keep to your own cisterns and drink from your own well.
Exactly.
And don't let your fountains spray all over the place.
Exactly.
You got to love the sexual euphemisms of the Proverbs. I really feel like that's an important thing. And now, granted, even if you're not married, I don't know if that's like the standard. Your celebrity crush is your standard of what your future spouse is going to be, and that's going to be a huge letdown. Or maybe an upgrade. Who knows? Just depends on where you go. But I feel like that's the part where we're just getting into fantasy, and fantasy doesn't really help reality.
I agree.
Man, we went through a whole lot of stuff today.
We did all over the place.
Man, hey, if you have any questions, would you text us at 737-231-0605 or go to pastorplek.com. We'd love to hear from you. We talk faith, we talk culture, everything in between. Thanks, Ruben, for joining me.
Absolutely.
Man, it's a pleasure to always talk to you. Such a smart, esteemed guy. Guy's well-read and well-newsed. Hey, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Have an awesome week of worship.